Well, from the pages of my website, MikeHuckabee.com, where you can sign up for my free, yes, free newsletter, comes these inspiring, surprising stories that you're going to watch in the news. First up, after changing the venue and even the time at the last minute, showing up in a Kunta Kinte t-shirt that implied he was a slave and refusing to sign a waiver that all free agents sign at tryouts, not to mention getting a late season individual tryout that most people would never receive, and then being allowed to maybe even let Nike turn it into a commercial, and changing the venue just 1 hour before the session, shrinking the NFL teams attending from the original 25 to 8, who followed last-minute directions to the high school stadium that Kaepernick chose to control so he could control the narrative. Colin Kaepernick once again complained that he's a victim and he's been treated unfairly by the NFL. After all of that, well, outspoken ESPN reporter Stephen A. Smith summed it up this way. He said, quote, he doesn't want to play. He wants to be a martyr. But guess what? It ain't working this time. All of us believe that Colin Kaepernick would have showed out, and if he had showed out, I believe he would have had a job inside of 2 weeks, end quote. Now, Smith said a lot more on his show, First Take, feeling that Kaepernick doesn't really want to work for the job, and he's trying to bully the NFL to work with him only on his terms. Hey, if he's ever going to quarterback again, the NFL should create a team just for Kaepernick and his supporters. We can call it the Minneapolis Masochists or the Davenport Dilettantes. I mean, they could skip the national anthem, just spend the first 10 minutes whining about how unfair the people are who sign their fat paychecks. Hey, it would get them away from teams that maybe want to concentrate on teamwork, winning, and even pleasing the fans. And then Kaepernick's team could just sit back and count the checks rolling in from Nike. Come on, NFL, just do it, I say. Well, House Republicans are demanding ABC News explain why it killed the Jeffrey Epstein story. Killed is an interesting choice of words when talking about Epstein and his prison end. Anyway, could we also demand that ABC and CBS explain why they colluded to smear and fire an innocent woman just because they mistakenly thought that she was a whistleblower who exposed ABC's cover-up of Epstein? Now, if they don't recant of their corporate #MeToo conduct, Jeffrey Epstein will still be victimizing women from beyond the grave with the help of a complicit media. A media that loves whistleblowers, but not when the whistle is being blown on them. All right, let's switch gears to some encouraging news. We need some. Back in 2017, a Missouri woman named Marlene Brooks received a letter that was written in a shaky hand. It was from a neighbor she didn't know, named Wanda, and it read, Dear Mrs., would you consider to become my friend? I'm 90 years old. I live alone. All my friends have passed away. I'm so lonesome and scared. Please, I pray for someone. Well, Brooks and her daughter hurried to Wanda's house, and they said she was such a sweet lady, and she was over the moon to have just some visitors. She had serious health problems that made it hard for her to go out, and her friends and relatives had gradually passed away, leaving her isolated. She told Brooks, I hope you didn't think it was stupid for me to write you, but I had to do something. Thank you so much for coming over. And she went on to say, I've lived here for 50 years, and I don't know any of my neighbors. Brooks writes, I also made sure that Wanda knew that she can call us at any time, that I'll be back to spend time with her. I'm sure Wanda and I will have some great times. I got to tell you, this sweet story also reminds us that if you see an elderly person in your neighborhood, maybe just out there sitting on the porch alone, don't assume that they don't want to be bothered by having someone talk to them. They might be in a similar situation to Wanda. Older people have learned so much more. Many aspects of life are too complicated and subtle to learn quickly. It can take decades to acquire the deep knowledge and understanding to be a truly effective therapist, pastor, manager, or politician. There is no substitute for acquired learning, and there's no one who can benefit more than younger people saying hello or knocking on the door of a neighbor even today. You might just make a friend and gain a jackpot full of life knowledge that you can't get anywhere else. And I say that is truly a win-win. Now, we've got some questions that viewers have sent, and I want to speak to them. This comes to us from Barry in St. Louis, and I assume he's a Cardinal fan. By golly, he better be if he lives in St. Louis. All right, senior counterterrorism official Kash Patel filed a lawsuit claiming that Adam Schiff weaponized the media to advance his impeachment agenda. Patel claims that he acted together with liberal news site Politico, leaking information to them to help create 2 false stories for Politico, claiming NSC official Patel was actually feeding President Trump negative information about Ukraine. And the question is this: how or will this lawsuit by Kash Patel affect the impeachment hearings taking place now? Quite frankly, probably won't affect him at all. They're going to go through no matter what. I think Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi are determined that whether they have evidence or not, whether they have grounds or not, and they keep changing it every week, as we all know, they're rushing toward impeachment. Truth is, they're like the little boy that was out walking in the woods and a man came upon him. The little boy had a gun thrown across his shoulder. And the man said, "Little boy, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm hunting." And he said, "What are you hunting for?" He said, "I don't know. I haven't found it yet." That little boy was Adam Schiff. All right, Barbara from Greenwich, Connecticut wants a little clarification on a comment I made last week. She said, "You appeared on Fox News and said the current impeachment hearings would lead to a Trump re-election landslide. What if he's actually impeached? Won't he be removed from office and not allowed to run in 2020? Well, a lot of people think impeachment is removal. It isn't. Impeachment is simply bringing formal charges. Only the House can do that, but once the House does it, then it goes over to that other body of the legislature, the U.S. Senate. And it is the Senate who tries the president on the charges of impeachment. Now, let me explain. The Senate will try him. It'll be presided over by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts. And the truth is, they have to get 67 votes, 2/3, in order to remove him from office. Now, unless they come up with a whole lot of evidence, and you can tell they have been trying, and so far just haven't found anything that's working. But if they are able to come up with that evidence and send it over to the Senate, it better be good, because so far what they've got, it'll never convince at least 20 Republicans, in addition to every single Democrat, that they need to remove a president less than a year before the voters can make that decision if they really want to remove him. And that's how the American political system ought to work. Not Congress removing the people you voted for, but if you want to make a change, every 4 years we have an opportunity. It's called an election. And I hope that sometime over the course of the next year, the Democrats will learn that and even respect it. Let's hope so. Now, American Interest First, that's their name. It's an odd name that parents would give their kids, but that's what they said their name was. They've sent this question in. It said, outspoken Australian politicians Andrew Hastie and James Paterson have been critical of China's authoritarian state and attempts to interfere with Australia's government. And they were preparing for a trip to China. But the Chinese embassy stated the pair was unwelcome at this time. Both lawmakers rejected a request, I think it's more of a demand from China, to repent for their criticism of the Communist Party and their crackdown on Hong Kong's citizens' protest. The question is, how should this inform America's trade conflict and our negotiations? Quite frankly, I don't think that in particular will have much to do with it, but here's what I'm telling you. China has never been faced with the crisis they face now, and that crisis is the United States of America isn't rolling over and allowing them to bully us, pressure us, and we're simply pushing back. It does mean for some rather difficult situations in terms of trade, but I'm going to tell you, if we don't do it, we'll never be able to have a surviving economy. And it's hurting China a heck of a lot worse than it's hurting us. I can assure you of that. I, for one, thank God that President Trump has said no more rolling over to the Chinese. Well, we want to hear what you have to say, so you can write to us at my2cents@tbn.tv. That's my2cents@tbn.tv. Finally, a story from my Twitter page that you can subscribe to at Governor Mike Huckabee, actually at Gov Mike Huckabee. And here's the story. A federal jury found an anti-abortion team led by David Daladin caused harm to Planned Parenthood by secretly taping abortion doctors and their staff, awarding punitive damages of $870,000. Daledon, who heads the Center for Medical Progress, and his co-defendant, Sandra Merritt, posed as human tissue buyers for a fake company called Biomax as part of a hidden camera investigation into Planned Parenthood. Now, the jury found Daledon and his group, which also includes abortion opponents Albin Romberg and Troy Newman, of conspiracy to commit fraud, breach of contract, and trespass, and to violate federal and state recording laws in Maryland, California, and Florida. U.S. District Judge William Orrick ruled prior to the trial that he would not consider anything he learned from the recordings, which is bizarre. Planned Parenthood attorney Rhonda Trotter told the jury, quote, "The defendant's plan was not to find crimes, and it was not about journalism. It was about using any means, including illegal means, to destroy Planned Parenthood," end quote. Well, the jury awarded Planned Parenthood and several affiliates roughly $478,000 in compensation for security costs and changes to their vetting procedures. And they found the defendants had also conspired to violate the Federal Racketeer, Influence, and Corrupt Organizations Act, or RICO. That triples the compensatory damages. In total, Planned Parenthood looking to receive $2.275 million in a verdict. Now, I want to tell you something. If these two advocates for the sanctity of life end up penniless and behind bars just because they tried to expose the horrific actions of Planned Parenthood, then their First Amendment rights, stripped from them by a U.S. district judge, really are not the only things you need to worry about. Your First Amendment rights could well be taken from you. Well, until next time, these are the facts of the matter. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, be sure to leave a like, then subscribe, and hit the notification bell below. Now, if you didn't like it, you ought to find a Ben Shapiro video to detox you with more facts.